Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for coming to today's Culture Now. I'm Antonia Blocker. I'm the Associate Curator of Talks here at the ICA. As ever, it's wonderful to see so many people here on a Friday lunchtime. Thank you for spending it with us. And thank you for braving the rain. I'm sure it's going to be worth it, as we have the wonderful David Pearson here to discuss text design at Penguin. As you probably all know, today's talk has been programmed to coincide with our current reading room exhibition, Gerald Cinamon Collected Works Since 1958. Unfortunately, Jerry wasn't able to participate today, but we're really delighted that he's here, and he is happy to sign books in the bookshop afterwards, I believe. So that's wonderful, thank you. So just a little bit more about David. He studied at Central St Martin's in London before taking a job at Penguin Books as text designer and later cover designer. He left to establish his own studio, Type as Image, in 2007. He's won numerous awards for book design and has been listed as one of Britain's top 50 designers by The Guardian. He's been nominated for the Design Museum's Designer of the Year award and is a member of the, and I'm going to mess up the pronunciation, Alliance Graphique Internationale, or AGI. So please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? It's so nice to see you all with the lights up, by the way. I've never had this opportunity before. It's lovely. Thanks for coming on a Friday lunch. You're actually here on a Friday lunch. Just to sort of carry on from what Antonia just said, it's a minor miracle that we've got the great man here at all. But did you have a heart attack about 4 hours ago, Jerry? Is that right? Six. Oh, okay. And it's just phenomenal. And I think, there's a man that goes to extraordinary lengths to get out of having to put up with me on stage. So, but it really is amazing that you're there. And I'm so glad I'm looking at you right now and that you can shout at me throughout this talk when I get things wrong. So, but I'm really privileged to be here, genuinely. And to have been asked here, by Jerry and by his family, lovely, lovely, lovely family, by the way, of which I think take up maybe half of this audience. So, and I've been invited to kind of talk to Jerry about his work over the last few weeks, and I'm being filmed by Alfred, and it's just been a joy. And Jerry's a hero of mine, and through my love of Penguin books, I've kind of always wanted to see his work and talk to him about it, and I've got to do that. And you see that in the short film downstairs. You get a sense of what it was like that day, and it was just lovely. And I think one of the things that I'm really drawn to with people that work within this world, I love people that are obviously very good at their job, but also that don't take themselves too seriously. And it's why I get on so well with Phil and Catherine, for example, my teachers and often collaborators, oftentimes collaborators with my work, and it's because we have a laugh as well. And that day filming with Jerry, I'd never laughed so much. There was one moment, actually, which I remember. I don't know if it was picked up on film by Alfred, but I think I was complimenting him to such an extent that he actually just leant over and he said, "Do you want to touch me?" And I was just aware that out of context that might actually sound a bit weird, but it was the perfect thing to have heard at that moment. It relaxed me. It just made me feel like we're going to have a great day filming it. We did, and I'm very grateful for that. But Jerry is a true all-rounder, perhaps more than anyone that's ever worked at Penguin. And the more I've seen about his work in the last few weeks, the more I've been blown away by just how much of an all-rounder he is. There are things that he doesn't show anyone that he can do so masterfully, and it's just makes you feel a little bit kind of, well, I don't know. I almost gave up a couple of weeks ago. Jerry was born in Boston, and he arrived in the UK in 1960 via New York, and I've heard via an excursion to Switzerland at some point, I think, which is probably quite evident in some of the work you'll see. He's been with us ever since, to the point where I don't detect any kind of Boston accent anymore, Jerry. But maybe it's in there somewhere. But Jerry worked at Penguin from 1961 until 1986, and he began with one-off commissions through to being, chief designer by the time he retired. And you were hired initially, I believe, by editor Kay Webb, although I think Hans Schmoller would have probably approved of your work. But also, Germano Facchetti may have looked over your work as well. Oh, and John Miles may have been a part of that situation as well. So. Oh, he had, okay. But I just thought, what a list of scary people to be running the rule over your work. So you obviously had a good portfolio. I mean, let's just jump in. I mean, it's important to remember that Jerry was working in the early 60s at a time where all of a sudden there was a move over to offset lithography, and it was very much replacing letterpress image reproduction. So, up until that point, you very much had a section in books where it would be a plate section of different paper, like a sort of thicker, glossier paper, and the images would have been letterpressed onto it. And then all of a sudden, this new technology meant that books could be truly integrated. Image and type could all be printed on the same paper. So it was Jerry was very much at the forefront of this new technology and really pushing it to its limits, I guess you would say. And then all of a sudden images were freed, and I think it would be good to now look through some layouts where Jerry is just showcasing those skills really. I mean, this is actually a single column page design that Jerry produced. So this is the architecture of Michelangelo, 1970. I mean, I just think the thing that strikes me most quickly with Jerry's work is this really satisfying clarity that it holds, and the image and text just seem to be really harmonious, like all the time. And also, critically, when an author discusses something, Jerry will go to great pains to make sure that the supporting imagery would arrive, right on cue as you're reading that bit of text. And, that's really not as easy as it looks. These are just incredibly crafted pages. And, in the case of this book, the Modern Movements in Architecture, it's just, there's always a logic to Jerry's work as well. Like if you look at his design, you can always sense the reasons for him doing something. And, this isn't frivolous design. He's not just pushing things around for whatever reason. I mean, you look at this page, for example, and of the Eames house in California, and all of a sudden it feels very logical that the exterior and the interior of the building face each other, and that they're kind of given that equal hierarchy. And yeah, like I say, it's just a pleasing thing that maybe doesn't have to bash you over the head in order to satisfy, It's just very well balanced layouts. They never sort of tip over in any kind of way. They're always well judged. The Statue of Liberty here, a cover for a 1976 jacket. There's a kind of rigor to Jerry's book covers as well, but there'll usually be a moment where it just really lifts off. There'll be a lightness of touch there as well, which I really like about Jerry's work. He seems to marry this kind of rigor with this kind of freedom of expression, which I just think is really rare, and it really draws me in. But with this series of books, I think this is the only cover, isn't it, that doesn't have an actual size detail on it, presumably because of the size of the subject matter. But, again, just beautiful layouts. And I think critically, Jerry listens to the content. It's this phrase that I think I picked up through one of Fraser's classes, actually. One of the students said, listen to the content. All the answers are in there. In the case of this book, there's a very wide inner column there left for captions because the captions, would be quite extended and quite information heavy. So Jerry's building that into the design. And also you've just got this sort of stop frame kind of aspect to the way the images, trip along, which makes it a very pleasurable sequence. And then, and then you get these moments of high drama as well with Jerry's books, which you just don't expect. You just have this very dense kind of page, and then all of a sudden you turn to this, and it just, I just love the kind of drama of this page. The fact that you have, the murdered Marat in his bath on the right, and then on the left-hand page you have this kind of very, very vertical column, which is almost stressing that kind of falling down of the body. I just think it's really magnificent. And you have that space in between as well to create that little pocket, that break before you hit the artwork. It's just, I just find it jaw-dropping when I get to things like that in books. And then, similarly, also conversely, you have pages like this where, none of the images will be particularly important. There'll just be kind of, there'll just be smaller moments within the book. But Jerry was really expert at judging, the tone and the temperature of the artwork that's going into the book. So he will always judge, what sort of moment it requires. Which again, it's just not as easy as he makes it look. Again here. Excuse me, sorry. So this is Sculpture in Britain. This is a 1988 publication. And these are three major discussion points, so, that's slightly different to the previous page. And again, it's so tricky to achieve a balanced design here when you've got so little text to support the imagery. But I always feel like Jerry pulled it off. I would never be able to make that page work. It would just tip over in all the wrong ways. But, damn you always make it work. Again, this very big moment here, and again, you see that little, you see the moments of pause that Jerry builds in when you need them. You absolutely need that little gap on that spread, and it's just, I really like it. It's kind of an invitation for the reader to just kind of stop and look around, and it's something else that I really appreciate with these. And then, just going back to designers letting their hair down, I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, designing a book, there's a limit to what you can do. But I just, look, Jerry's title pages are just always a joy. And I've actually got a bit obsessed by them when I was working on the Penguin My Design book. And I photographed loads of them and learnt so many lessons from them. Unfortunately, we couldn't fit them in the book. But, I love this, dictionary of architecture. You have all these letters which are actually plans, actually mapped letters, and just the way that Alan Lane is aligned under the A on the left page there, and a dictionary of architecture is aligned under the D. It's just such a playful moment, and it just it lowers you into the book in just the right way, I think. Sorry, I'm really nervous. Right, okay, so. Right, where were we? Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, and a little touch here. Jerry would very obviously continue themes throughout the book as well. So you've got this decorative map here, which very much communicates to the title page. So there's usually a very, very clear link right the way through.
David, can I just say that I was given all that material. I never asked for a map to be done. I just had to fit it in.
Okay. Decorative art. So again, critical alignments and pairings of images. Jerry is really expert at, and you can just see how well balanced that page is. How sort of it's not top heavy, bottom heavy. Everything just kind of pulls itself together in a really sort of pleasing way. Again, the tonal quality of these images is just absolutely kind of working, and then you have these bigger books, where, just when you're thinking, Jerry's so used to sort of fitting thousands, hundreds of thousands of images into these very small books, these A5 books. He'll have a moment like this, and he just rolls with the punches. So so this is the London Doré, and this is Doré's wood engravings, beautifully photographed by Eric Demer. And you've got these big, glorious reproductions with very generous margins, I guess, for the first time, especially of what I've seen of Jerry's work. And you can tell that Jerry enjoyed breaking from this rigor, and just, everything's just so grand and glorious. And also just, the use of the typeface there, which kind of, this kind of flourished Victorian type, which mirrors the kind of Gothic quality of the images. I think it's a really lovely touch. And these books really serve as a kind of, guiding light for me with my book design. It's all in there. And just look at that. Again, just listen to the content. If an image needs to go that big, just do it. Just don't be afraid. Embrace it. And it's just a joyous moment in the book. And just moving on to development in structural form now, talking about appropriateness for the content, this text was quite different in that it was, you had very lengthy and very technical texts which can, discuss the content. And I think Jerry's kind of ensured that there's enough white space, enough pauses, within this book, which rest areas I think he refers to them as, and it's and it really does help with this book, and it's I just think it creates a sense of light and space as well, which is just absolutely appropriate for the content. So all these books are just absolute treasures, and I just urge you to go and find them on eBay or A-Books or wherever, because as I've found out through working on various Penguin projects, all of their books are just so cheap. They're like 99p because they printed in such huge quantities, but there's some books that aren't that cheap, and they're all Jerry's, and it's because they look like this. So if you can get cheap versions now, you should absolutely do it while you can. And again, just that kind of jaw-dropping moment. I mean, look at the balance of that page. The text almost becomes a tower in itself, and there are so many lessons here for any young designer. Back to the title pages. Sorry, I am obsessed with all this stuff. You can probably tell, hence the nervousness. But I think I'm getting back on track now. I love this book of Zen poetry, and just that sense of this vertical drop and the sense of movement in the picture is almost kind of mirrored in the type. You have this kind of the sense of kind of flow, which seems to me to represent the nature of haikus really quite nicely. And you've got this wonderful title page for French Revolution, and so a very sort of 18th century solution in terms of its lettering. So I think this uses Fournier. But Jerry uses Fournier's ornaments to combine to create this ominous-looking guillotine, which is about to fall on the royal neck. You see at the bottom there, and again, just the humour just really leaps out at you, which is it's lovely.
David, I think you were the first to notice that.
Oh, I can't believe that. But it's I love it. I mean, it's the title page. This is another thing that Jerry really enjoys, and he leaves the title page to last, which is something I do. I see it as sort of putting the icing, or I guess the cherry on top of the cake. And after you've sort of slogged your guts out doing, hundreds of pages with using cow gum, I suspect, and cutting, pasting, and sticking, I think it's genuinely really nice to leave this moment, to the end of the process, and you can sense Jerry rejoicing in that moment, I think, and I really like that. And I think a title page should have that kind of mood. Really, it's probably the only moment in the book where you can afford yourself that. But just to show a few more, and I hope these are all yours, Jerry. I'm not 100% sure. So at this point, I'm just guessing they're Jerry's from the collection, but they're this is how much fun there's to be had. With just one series, and I just think they're a real lesson in how to treat images and text together. And he must have had a blast working on these. But also, I should really point out, we're moving away from text design now, quickly. So Jerry was actually taught by Paul Rand. And I really sort of see that with this design. That's what I'm not saying you're imitating Paul, but I just sense his presence, with this cover, which is really, it's just incredible. Like, to think that Jerry worked with Paul Rand, and anyway, sorry, I'm starstruck enough. I should calm down. So where was I? So and that was at Yale, by the way. Sorry, and Armin Hoffman taught you as well. Armin Hoffman. Oh, okay. All right. But yeah, I like to think there's a bit of Rand there and what have you. But history of graphic design. This is another. Obviously, we're changing gears slightly here now. Like Jerry worked on a lot of Alan Lane books, which is a hardback imprint for on the Penguin books, and they were set up in 1966, and they're still going now. And I was looking again at these books in the archive, and I suppose they were the first books where I was very aware that Penguin were treating the whole surface of the book, the front, back, and spine. And most of Jerry's work for the Alan Lane imprint does that, and I just think it's just a wonderful thing. I mean, you see it on a packed shelf, and you're aware that the image is slightly bleeding around, and it really promotes that kind of, you pulling the thing out and rotating it and handling it and interacting with it. And if you can get people to do that, of course, you've got a real chance. But this book absolutely does that, and I love the playfulness of it. Again, you've got this modern type and the old world type alongside it, and just really effortlessly communicating the nature of the contents and the breadth of the contents. So great lessons these, and my favourite covers, and this should be everyone's, I guess, are the ones that don't give you all the answers. And this is one of Jerry's own photographs for the child's world, and it just does that great thing of not telling you everything, and it invites you to interpret the cover and to activate your interpretation and to engage with it. And I just think it looks so effortless and great. It's just done so rarely nowadays. That these things really stand out to me. Also just commissioning some of Jerry's commissions of illustrators I'm really impressed by as well, and just the way we spoke a little bit about this when I interviewed Jerry, and it was amazing. I was saying, how much do you tell the illustrators if you're commissioning a piece of titling like this? What do you give them? Do you give them source material? Do you give them notes or whatever? And what came back was quite surprising in that you don't really tell them much. I think the key was you just go after the best people for the job, and you let them figure it out. And I just thought it was a lovely thing to hear. I do think we over-prescribe things a hell of a lot when we commission people, and before you know it, then you've taken all the joy out of the job for them. And I think it's just really nice to know that someone that is so fastidious and detailed, that they can allow that freedom of expression. And I think that really comes through with the work. I love this cover. It almost sums up all of the tensions. Within Jerry's work, you have kind of the Swiss rigor and the alignments, and then you have this very playful illustration which sort of cuts against that slightly. And I really like that tension. I just think Jerry can kind of do it all really. And just moving on a little bit. I mean, I do feel. Like I say, I've spent a lot of time in archives trying to learn from these legendary figures, and I think that, I sort of felt like Jerry might be a bit of a kindred spirit, because I really got the sense that he was a slightly frustrated historian as well, you can really pick up on that with particularly Jerry's work for this monotype recorder, which was to commemorate Hans's death in 1985, and this was actually produced in 1987. And it's just the most incredible document. It's still the last word really on Hans's amazing work and life, and it's spoken from a true friend's perspective, and just to a great many designers, including Phil Baines, for example. This is how they learnt about Hans Schmoller, and he's still a criminally underrepresented designer. This is no way of judging how successful you are as a designer, but there's still no kind of Wikipedia entry for him, which seems really odd. But this was a real fitting moment for him, and it's thanks to Jerry's dedication to that cause, really. And similarly, the Rudolf Koch book that you produced over the course of 4 years. I mean, a real labour of love. I mean, what a book, if you don't own that book and you can still get a copy of it, it really is a terrific book. Buy anything that Jerry does. And so, again, the Penguin by Design book was just the next stage after this, 50 Penguin Years, an exhibition catalogue which Jerry produced. And so, we were just continuing that line of work, really. I love this cover. It's got a silver penguin after 25, so the 25-year anniversary, and then it's actually got a gold penguin for the 50. And even to this day, I don't know whether I could get that approved. That's quite an expensive cover.
To go to the very top.
Yeah, to go to the top. Jerry's obviously more persuasive than I am at getting these things done, but it's a real treat. And again, track these books down because they're just terrific. And I guess, this is my last slide, really, but I just wanted to finish on this because I think this is one of the first things I saw of Jerry's work at a talk that he gave maybe 13 or 14 years ago. And it was the very first image that I saw when I'd begun the research process with Phil Baines for the design book. So I was at the beginning of this incredibly exciting period for myself. And I think in a way this image really served me well moving forward, because it communicates so much about Penguin and their brand, for want of a better word. And also, but you know, you and what the designers stood for at Penguin, and it's got this kind of modern freshness, but it's also got that kind of dignified flippancy which Penguin have always cherished so much. And yeah, I just think it's approachable, modern and dignified, and I think they're probably good words to describe Jerry as well. But yeah, I'd just like to thank you again for all of your generosity really over the last few weeks, and I just urge you all to buy Jerry's book, which has just been released, a beautiful book that everyone should own really, despite the fact that I'm in it a bit. But yeah, any questions, please do fire them over. So, thank you.
Excuse me, wait for the mic. Yeah, that's right, that's the one. And it's incredibly modern and sort of fresh. And then you see 3 and sixpence, so it must be really, really quite old.
I think, I mean, yeah, I think that when they're, oh yeah, let's have a look. Got it somewhere. So yeah, 64. I think, in a way, Penguin have always been at their strongest when they have that kind of very modern, very approachable, very kind of it's almost like an elemental kind of design, really. And they obviously didn't have that all the time. And Jerry's seen more than anyone, really, the sort of ebbs and flows of the company and the tensions within. And, you know, I mean, the amount of change when Germano Facchetti arrived alone would have been fascinating to witness.
He was there before.
Oh, right, sorry. I really should get my facts straight. And Peter Mayer, and, you know, I mean, there are so many sort of big moments that Jerry sort of lasted through at the company. And I say lasted because, you know, Chickhold gets lauded so readily for his time at Penguin, but he was there for 2 years, you know, and obviously his work was incredible, but, you know, Schmoller and Jerry, they were really doing it for you know, a much more important part of the company's history, really, in terms of legacy. I think, yeah, I mean, you know, this cover sort of represents everything that's good about Penguin in my eyes, you know, and I still buy books, Penguin books that do this, you know, that they're a great thing to have when I'm doing my job and I need to communicate that you can do this, or you can do something with that level of confidence and conviction, and it's kind of okay, you know. And unfortunately, I keep having to go back to this period to get those reference points, but you know, Penguin, you know, they've always been very proactive in terms of you know, good design. They are now. They do stick their neck out more than any other publisher. You know, there is something at that company that really works. A little bit more conviction and bravery, I think, with design work, definitely. So, would anyone like me to ask Jerry a question, or for me to ask Jerry a question and then relate it back to you, or would you like to ask a question?
I enjoyed that much more than if I'd been on stage. You asking me questions. I don't think you made it quite clear to everybody what had happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and that I'm very pleased to be here. Anyway, I was in... Anyway, I was in hospital up to a few days ago almost, and I really enjoyed this so much. And thank you so much, David. Yeah.
On a point of process, the cover page often done last to complete the process. On that point, not a question, but perhaps you would comment on, can you judge a book by its cover?
Well, yeah, I think it's all we can do, really. I mean, I think, you know, people will say that they don't, but I'm pretty sure we do. it's our entry point into the book. I mean, it's the thing that we'll make an assumption on in a split second when we're on the other side of the shop, and then before we know it, we're reading about the book, and then other factors sort of kick in, like the tactility of the book or the blurb or you know, other things. But yeah, I mean, it might be wishful thinking, but I really think that the cover does a lot of work. It's very hard to prove it sometimes, you know, the success rate of certain covers, but every now and again you'll have a very, very clear case study which will come around, and it's very hard to disprove. Even changing a book's format has a massive effect on sales, and you know, there's this incredible story from Penguin that during their 60th anniversary, they I don't know if you remember, but they reduced the size of all of these small paperbacks. They were called the Penguin 60s. So it's the first time they'd done little pocketable square books. And up until that point, they sold 2,000 copies of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, every year. It was a steady seller at 2,000 in the main series design. The minute it went to that size, they sold 250,000 copies in 1 year. And that's because all of a sudden it was available on shop counters. You know, who doesn't want to buy a small book that says Meditations on it when they're by the, you know, and it's 99p or 60? You know, it's like there are so many other factors that affect that, but that's a pretty pretty obvious kind of indication that the book's format, or you know, what it's doing affects sales. But yeah, I don't know. Like I say, hard to prove. Your job's never done as a designer. You have to convince everyone of your workings all the time, and it's again why I think I sort of cover, you know, this golden time at Penguin when you hear about all of the departments working quite closely, or certain key characters working quite closely together, you know, for this common good. And you know, one of my small criticisms of Penguin when I was working there is that you are very much kept in a box to focus on your job. And that's good. It means you're productive and you do as much work as possible, and it's probably a very good reason. But I did have a frustration that I didn't really learn about how the industry worked. You know, I didn't know what a meeting with Amazon felt like, for example, and you know, it's probably not something to go hankering after. But all I mean is I think it's important to have a broader sense of how the industry works in order to make those decisions about how something sells. I think that's really helpful. That was a really rambly answer, wasn't it? So, sorry. Yes.
Could you work with the technology that Jerry used, scribbling over letraset lettering? Or could Jerry, perhaps we should ask him, work with the cursors and giant screens that I imagine you work on?
Wow. Do you want to go first, Jerry? Could you work on a screen?
I couldn't quite hear.
Oh, could you work with modern technology to create book covers or book design?
No, I couldn't possibly use computer. I couldn't possibly use computer design because I wasn't brought up with it. When I left Penguin, there were about maybe 10 designers in my department. One computer, and that was on the secretary's desk. They didn't have any computers at all. The computer was to find out when the printer would be sending in finished books and etc., but nothing to do with design at all.
Well, I mean,
After all, the computer has only been around for a few years, whereas designers have been around for much longer than that.
yeah. Well, I think something else that Jerry and I spoke about during the interview was the speed of design, and I'm probably not I'm not a typical example of a modern designer because I'm quite bit of a technophobe. I've never owned a mobile phone. I still use really archaic technology that not a lot of printers are even tend to take from me. I probably could work with my hands to an extent. I mean, a scalpel and a ruler. You know, I do enjoy that kind of slow design. I do think there's a lot to be said for slowing down the way you work and allowing yourself more time to consider your decisions. I just think that can never be a bad thing. There seems to be this kind of desire to sort of have shortcuts all of the time and to speed up the process, and I don't really know what that's doing. Just think the longer you can spend just assessing your decisions before you kind of commit them to a book, it's not time wasted really. So I'm probably closer to that way around than Jerry is to using a computer. But don't get me wrong, I mean, they're wonderful things, but, you know, I do get tired of looking at a square screen. I do this week anyway, but then I don't cut the ends of my fingers off quite so much, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. Yeah. Yes, Ken Garland.
Do I need this, I suppose? About the end of 1960 or the beginning of 1961, somebody rang me at my office when I was particularly busy, and he came to see me out of the blue. I gave up work for the day because I had met such an interesting man. And we went and had a very long lunch, and he became my friend and has been ever since. I admire his work enormously, but most of all, I value his friendship. I'm overjoyed to see him here today.
Maybe that's the perfect place to end. Jerry will be in the bookshop signing his book, and again, thank you all so much for coming, for Jerry for making it today, and to David. Thank you.